Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast with me, your host, Tom Rust. Today, absolutely delighted to be joined by Lydia Daydell. Lydia, thanks ever so much for jumping on.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. I was in Ireland last week and flew home yesterday morning and was in Steel City Interactive in Sheffield to do some exclusive content with USIC. So it was really exciting. Busy couple of days, but I'm glad to be back home now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I need to apologise, really. Yesterday, you were with the heavyweight champion of the world, and and today you're with Tom from TRSB Sports, but I suppose everyone's got to start somewhere.
You're just as important.
Well, listen, it seems like in the boxing world at the moment, there's so much going on Sky Sports box office. Last weekend, we finally got to see Khan fight Brooke. Just want to get your opinion on it, and did it go the way you expected it to?
It did, to be honest. I never really just because of the job that I'm in, I have to be very diplomatic. I have to kind of sit on the fence quite a bit. I don't give my opinions on fights publicly, for obvious reasons,
Yeah.
you know, because affect down the line when you're looking to work with fighters or do interviews and stuff like that. So I usually just kind of keep my opinions to my group chat with my friends. But yeah, I told my gambling friends, they all, you know, all the guys would always say, right, I want to make a few quid, what do you reckon? And I said 6 rounds, stoppage by Kel. So yeah, I wasn't surprised. I didn't think it would be as one-sided as it was. But you know, that doesn't take away from anything that Amir Khan has achieved in his career. A phenomenal fighter that, you know, retires, if he does retires knowing that he made such an impact on the sport.
Yeah, it was a great fight. I was listening to TalkSport earlier as well, and they, you know, everyone's talking about what's next for Brooke, but they was right to mention that Amir Khan's got 3 weeks to potentially, you know, activate the rematch clause.
Yeah, like, you know, lots of people, when fighters are kind of at the end of the career, I get asked so much, you know, should someone retire? Should that be it? You know, and I always feel very uncomfortable answering it because obviously I'm not a fighter. I'm not in there. I haven't been in there. I'm not a coach, not qualified to, you know, to say whether someone should retire or not. But from a lover of the sport and a lover of the fighters and what it, you know, doing this job for the last, you know, 7-8 years, getting to see firsthand how fighters, you know, what they put their bodies through in fight camps and how taxing it is for them to be a professional fighter. I would, you know, I'd like to see him take a rematch, and I would not like to see him carry on. And I think that of Kel as well. You know, I think Kel has had a fantastic career. He's been in there with some of the best, and, you know, fair enough, didn't get the results, you know, against, you know, arguably the elite end of the sport, but, you know, he is a champion in his own right. And that kind of win over Amir Khan is sort of like ending a very long chapter in his career and in the kind of minds of boxing fans. So for me, if I was Kel and I was Kel's family, I would say, you know, what a way to go out on a massive high. But again, you know, these are fighters. It's in them to want to fight. It's very difficult for fighters to retire, to step away from the sport. So we'll just have to see in 3 weeks what happens.
Yeah, no, again, it was incredible, and it was a convincing win from Kel Brooke. There's lots of talk about what's next for him. I know you've just said, you know, he may retire. It would be a massive high to go out on, but there's lots to talk about him fighting potentially Eubank or Conor Benn. Have you got a preference to what fight you'd like to see him take if he does continue?
I mean, I'd love to see the Benn fight, to be honest, because it's a classic case of, you know, old versus new, if that's what what way you want to kind of pinpoint. But I would also like to see him fight Chris Eubank. To be honest, like, I'm such a fan of Chris Eubank. I just love you know, I love the fact that he's so disliked. You know, he just really takes that in his stride and plays up to it almost. you know, and it's so far removed. His character in boxing is so far removed from kind of, you know, the perception you get of him in real life. So I'd like to see both those fight. I think next I'd like to see Conor Benn, but that's purely from a, you know, boxing fan perspective. That's not taken into consideration. Would Kell be ready? You know, Conor's situation and their opponents or anything. I think just as like, you know, fantasy fights or whatever, I would like to see him in there with Kell. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much going on, and of course, as well, we've just had Fury White, you know, finally signed it. I don't think there's any real doubt that he was going to. I think he maybe just wanted to play Fury at his own game. But another exciting fight. I don't know about yourself, but I've asked a few people about that, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are excited. I'm buzzing for it, but a few people have said they're not actually that worried about watching it. And what sort of response have you heard from people that you've been talking to?
The general majority that, you know, that I've spoken to, or, you know, that just chit chat when you're working and people are discussing fights and different things. Obviously, it's a big topic of conversation because it's kind of mainstream news at the moment. As with anything that either of them would do in the sport, it usually is mainstream news. But I think most people are excited. And you know what? Like, a lot of people are, more people than I expected are backing Dillian to do something in this fight, you know, which is what you want. I hate when there's a big fight and, you know, everyone's like, the clear winner is selected. I love when there's a bit of, you know, disagreements and fans get to then have that back and forth in the weeks leading up to the fight. And there's so much intensity then about who's going to do it, like there was with Kell and Amir Khan. And then the fight happens and it goes one way or the other. And yeah, I think it's better for fight fans. It makes things a little bit more exciting. But you know, the lead up to that fight is going to be very interesting. And already Dillian's, you know, mind games, Tyson's mind games. Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And for me personally, you know, I'm a big fan of heavyweight boxing. Heavyweight division is probably one of the first that I took notice of, you know, in terms of being young and you know, being aware of the sport of boxing. You know, would have been Prince Nazim, Ricky Hatton, and then when I started to kind of pay more attention, it would have been the heavyweight division.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I'm equally excited for the press conferences. I think they're going to be incredible. Like, Fury's a great character. White's a great character. As long as he gets his private jet from Portugal.
Yeah.
Going on to AJ as well. You know, you had Usyk in with you yesterday. I take it you spoke about the rematch.
No, we didn't actually.
Oh, okay.
We didn't speak of the rematch at all. We just spoke about ESBC, the boxing game. It just wasn't, you know, it was kind of, when you're doing an interview like that, it's sort of like, I think it's a little bit different for me. I know there was you know, a few different people that got to have a few words with him while he was in the UK and in Sheffield. But for me, because I'm involved with ESBC and, you know, would be with the guys down there quite regularly doing interviews or filming footage or whatever it is, it's kind of like his purpose was for ESBC and being involved in the video game. So that's sort of what we kind of stayed on topic with that. But you know, he like, everyone is asking him, you know, behind the cameras, off camera.
Yeah, I was going to say, he probably gets asked that about 100 times a day, but so many great fights to look forward to. If we may, I'd like to go back a little bit as well. I've seen you in lots of interviews, obviously, especially now, we know we've got you on the channel, done a bit more research, but you've been quite honest and open. You've spoken about your own struggles, you know, with mental health. So going back to the original lockdown, how was that period for you?
It was fine, you know. The lockdown, when it first happened, you know, I was like, oh, listen, this will be over in a couple of weeks, we'll be all good. And then I think, you know, it was 6 months and I was like, okay, this may be a little bit than I thought. But I threw myself into work. I'd done a lot of Instagram lives. I think I ended up doing something like 160 Instagram lives over lockdown. So I used to do them every night, 7 o'clock, have a it was hard work, it was like, but it kept me focused, kept me busy, gave me a bit of a routine. If anything, I probably, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I find it very hard to take time off. I do definitely take time off, but I do find it hard to do it, but always grateful when I do. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, in my 20s, I would have been very, unaware of, self-aware, and definitely I never in an extremely dark place with mental health, but just anxiety and up and down moods and just living an unhealthy lifestyle. So I think it took me to hit sort of what I would call a rock bottom, and to sort of assess my life and assess, the direction that I wanted my life to go in. What was I passionate about? What was important to me? So, just being aware of those questions, asking myself, and, the journey has been, intense, but I'm at a place in my life now where, I feel like I have, developed into a person that I'm very proud of. And, but the growth of what I would call spiritual enlightenment is a long one, so I'm still on that path.
For people that, are struggling then, that will listen to this, what advice would you give? Because it sounds like from talking to you, you almost know when you might be going on a bit of a slippery slope to do things to get you out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have my triggers. When I'm working, I guess like very impatient. The more impatient I am, if things start to that really aren't that big a deal, I start to know that maybe, okay, I'm getting a little bit caught up with work. Physically wise, if I'm not training as much as I do, training jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, training martial arts was a huge factor in helping me get on the kind of straight and narrow in terms of living a healthier lifestyle. So, if there's days where, okay, it's been 4 or 5 days since I've gone to jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, I'd see that as a flag. If I'm eating unhealthily, that's a flag. There's all these different things that I've become aware of, and now I have the tools to be able to get back on top of things. But then obviously I go to therapy. I've gone to therapy for 8 years. The kind of the hard work of dealing with maybe past traumas or, relationships or whatever it might have been through my teens or my 20s. It took a couple of years to go through all that to kind of get some release in it. But now I still go to therapy, not as frequently, but therapy does help. I spend my days listening to people's stories, asking questions, and sometimes it's nice to just sit for an hour, someone listen to you, and not have to you have to ask questions and listen and stuff. And then I do a lot of like healing energy work and stuff. I do a lot of Reiki. I do a lot of cacao ceremonies. I don't drink. I don't take drugs. So there's loads of stuff that I have to do to kind of stay on the straight and narrow. But this job is intense, especially where I'm at. It's going to different countries, it's up and down, traveling, late nights, early mornings, long days, intense highs, low lows, so you have to do stuff in between that to stay grounded. And I've done the going on the session, like drinking loads. I've done the drug thing, I've done all that, and it just doesn't serve you. You can't be the what I would say the elite end of your career or your profession and do all that. It just doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, drinking definitely slows you down. Like I had my nights out when I was a little bit younger, but if I have a session now, I'm a write-off for about 3 or 4 days. But going back to your Friday night lives with a certain Mr. Dave Allen, I managed to catch a few of those, and the questions are flying in. And I think a lot of the time as well, you just go on there and just start a conversation. It would just end up well, you talk about anything and everything, but as much as, you know, you were giving back to your fans, I suppose, how much did that help you? Because it must have been nice just to jump on there with Dave. Obviously, he's a massive character and he's very popular in the sport. So how much did that help you for that period?
Well, you know what, it definitely helped me professionally. He's got such a following, and there's so many people who, you know, even now, because I live in South Yorkshire, so obviously he's very, very popular around these areas. And, you know, I'm getting trains, or I'm like in the Co-op or Lidl or something to shop, and people are like, oh, Friday nights with Dave Allen. And it's like, oh, I mean, I have an Irish, I take Irish accent, so I stand out anyway. But you know, he definitely brought a certain audience to Fight Connect TV. But we actually got really, really good friends through this, which is, you know, a benefit for me. I don't sort of have my friend circle and, you know, people that I've known all my life, and I don't turn to you know, veer too far out of that friend circle. And especially with the work that I do, people think, you know, because you interview boxers or you're going here to events that, oh, you all hang out together and stuff. That's not really the case for me. You know, I kind of do my job and then head off home. But with Dave, it was really different. We hit it off, and I felt got very protective over him. Because, you know, he was he's very childlike. He's very intelligent, Dave.
He likes to remind us of that, doesn't he? I saw your podcast where you were saying, I am quite intelligent.
I still let everyone know, but he actually is very intelligent. But he's also very childlike. So I did feel very protective of him, and he kind of says now, you know, I'm sort of like a big sister or a mother to him. But yeah, so it was lovely to because we were in lockdown, and I, you know, for the first 6 months, no one was, you know, I wasn't seeing anybody. And I think then it was only like after 6 months, you know, me and a couple of my friends made a personal decision where we were like, you know, fuck this. Let's just, you know, there's nothing to worry about here. We'd be grand. You know, and then I started, you know, being more sociable with, you know, a few people in my life and stuff. But for those couple of months, Dave was a huge, you know, he was a great support network, because we used to do a live, and then we go off and you know, I was having maybe 1 or 2 wines is when I was still drinking, and you know, we'd have a FaceTime, and we'd be doing puzzles and crosswords, and you know, he'd be like, ask me, this is how instant, he's like, right, test my capital city knowledge. So I'd have to get a book or a bleeding, you know, get my other phone, and I'd be like, right, what is the capital of? So we go crack. It was good fun, yeah.
That's what I love about boxing and just combat sport. You know, we've been going a little while now on this channel, and I've personally been amazed how accessible boxers are. You know, a lot of them reach out to us and say about coming on. But even ones with bigger followings, even yourself, you know, you've got a decent following. And obviously, because I don't know you personally, I didn't know whether you'd get back to us or not. But no, it has certainly surprised me. But going back to what you were saying, I think, you know, you're right. Your circle, you know, definitely gets smaller as you get older. And, you know, again, I don't know Dave personally, but from what you see on social media, he seems like he's in a good place and he's quite content now, you know, managing the fighters. Stevie Levy is obviously a character as well, but he seems quite content.
Yeah, he is, you know. The one thing that is, you know, that everyone will know about Dave is like that he has a very addictive personality, and he's been very open about you know, his gambling addictions and his own mental health struggle over the years. And you know, he would the first to admit that he does have an addictive personality, but he's just channeled that kind of addictive personality into, you know, something that can benefit him, which is, you know, obviously back training hard himself and now managing fighters. Which is why, you know, he didn't just have Stevie or Levi Kinciona. You know, he went and he's got about 10 of them now. Every time I see him at a show, he's got a new kid managing, you know. But he's got a very big heart, and he loves boxing and he loves the sport. And you know, he's good at what he does, and he's experienced the good and the bad side of the sport, and that can only be a good thing when you're managing up and coming fighters. You're able to keep them aware, or you're able to steer them in a certain direction that maybe others who don't have that experience can do.
Yeah, no, of course. I also saw him with Harris. Is it Harrison Hobson? Another young prospect that he's taken on. Like you were saying, it seems like he's always getting a few more fighters. I imagine there is a limit to how many he's going to take on, but he seems like he's doing well. And I love the videos as well, where like he'd be in his front room or his garden, just doing a little bit of training as well.
Yeah, the what is it? The patio of dreams, is that what we call it?
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to yourself, you know, you've done so much. Obviously, we spoke about the podcast, the Fight Connect TV. For people watching, can you just tell us a little bit about your route into the sport?
Yeah, I was in music for 10 years, and basically had like what I would call a midlife crisis around 29, and left music and was really lost, didn't have, you know, any vision or foresight into kind of what I wanted to do with my life. So I started jiu-jitsu, and I started competing in jiu-jitsu, and, you know, got really healthy, went from, you know, drinking every day, smoking, you know, taking prescription drugs to sleep and different things, to not doing anything and just training 6 days a week, doing yoga, you know, going to therapy. Totally had a lifestyle change, and through that met some people who worked for an organization called BAMA, which was an MMA organization. It is now Bellator Europe. You know, a lot of MMA fans will know Bellator, but they held events in the O2 in Dublin, like for like 4 times a year. So I used to work for them doing social media, you know, bringing fighters from the airport to the hotel, you know, dropping tickets off. You know, I kind of used to do a little bit of everything for them on the grounds over here because they were UK based. And then when I was working for them, I just, you know, just started seeing sort of like the way that the backstage area in big fight shows were working. You know, like one dressing room is a fighter warming up, the next dressing room is, you know, a fighter in tears because they've lost it, another is someone being sewn up by a doctor. You know, like was rooms where it was all this emotion, there was loads of stuff going on. And then when I started looking at, like, you know, post-fight interviews and different things, the terminology, the conversation was very technical. And if you didn't understand about jiu-jitsu, or you didn't understand about striking or boxing or whatever it was, the interviews were really not that interesting. So I just had this burning idea, like, consistently in the back of my head about, you know, giving Irish fighters at the time a platform to tell their stories, to talk about their journeys, to give them some promotion, but also create something that's entertaining. So, like, if a guy or girl, you know, is sat down and wants to watch a post-fight interview and their partner or their sister or brother or whoever it is next to them and has no interest in the sport, they'll still enjoy watching it because it's entertaining and the person is interested and the questions are good, and, you know, it's just all around an entertaining watch. So I just started Snapchatting, was the first thing that I'd done, going to shows, buying tickets, going to a show by myself. You know, none of my friends were into, like, not even combat sports, but they weren't into sports, full stop. And I used to just go to shows, community centre shows, local shows, regional shows, then bigger shows. And I would just sit in the front row and I would just Snapchat videos, Snapchat the results, you know, walkouts, all that kind of stuff. And then it started to get really popular. My Snapchat started to do, like, you know, thousands of people were watching it and tuning in. And then, you know, a show would come up and people would message me, been like, oh, are you going to be at this show? Will you be doing this? Will you be doing that? And then I set up an Instagram, then I set up a Facebook, you know, and I was going then to shows, filming kind of behind the scenes and, like, people coming in and fighters walking out and different things. And I went to a show called Akuma. It was in Northern Ireland, and it was an MMA show, amateur and pro MMA show. And Stephen, the promoter, he just came into me and he was like, I need you to do post-fight interviews. The guy that I get to do post-fight interviews hasn't turned up. He was from another MMA outlet. And I was like, oh, I don't do interviews. I just literally film like behind the scenes stuff. And he was like, no, I need you to do them. So I had about 20 minutes to prepare to stand in front of a camera and do post fight. But I'd done them. And at the time, I didn't know a lot in terms of fight, the technicality of fighting, a score, and I had an idea as a fan, but nothing to what the level you'd need to have to be able to have, an interesting or an educated conversation with someone. So I just sort of went, oh, well, I'll just talk to them. I'll just talk to them about their fight camp, or, how many tickets they sold, or their family. And then that way, that style of, having that honest conversation, it just took off. And it became really, unique to me, and people look forward to seeing a different type of interview. And it literally has just grown from there. It's mental to think that, like, now I live in the UK, and like, I'm covering these shows that I watched on TV as a child, or as a teenager. So I never set out for it to be this big, but I fell in love with it along the way. And anything that I have done, or anything that I do to 110%. So now that we're here, the goals have gotten bigger, and the vision has gotten, larger, I suppose.
And when you first started doing your interviews, how much did you sort of self-analyze? Because did you ever do interviews and come away and think, oh, I should have asked this question, or should have asked that, or it didn't quite go the way I wanted it to? And or in other interviews, did you come away and think, yeah, I nailed that one? What was that like when you first started?
I think I didn't have to do that because everyone else done it for me. All I had to do was check out some YouTube comments on a Sunday morning, and I would like sink into a deep depression.
That's it. There can be like 50 positive ones, and there'll be that one that is that one negative one, and that's the one you focus on. But looking at all the bits and pieces you do now, do you get nervous before you interview people or go on a podcast? Because when I watch you seem incredibly confident. Obviously your knowledge is great because you clearly know what you're talking about. Your guests look incredibly comfortable as well, which I think is key, because if someone you're talking to isn't comfortable, then the chances are they're not going to be as open as they would be potentially.
Yeah, 100%. And that has grown, that ability to put whoever I'm interviewing at ease has come through experience, through confidence, and a little bit of, just letting my own personality shine through. I wouldn't, I love people. I think that's the reason why, if someone was to say I was good at what I do, I would say that is one of the reasons, why they're saying that, or why they're seeing that, is that I love people. I love hearing about people's stories. I mean, I'll ask questions about anyone's life, whether I'm sat in a pub or I'm sat on a bus, or, someone next to in a train station. I love hearing about people and their stories and their journeys, and, how different people's lives are, and then how similar people's lives are. And I'm fascinated by fighters as well. I'm fascinated by what they put themselves through, how mentally tough you have to be, how physically tough you have to be, and just I'm very enamored by fighters and fighter lifestyle, and yeah. But I definitely, I don't tend to sit and analyze any of my interviews. I obviously go through the editing process and pick out, highlight videos and do emotional bits and stuff like that. But in terms of sitting and analyzing, I would never do, because I'm never happy. I do. I'm never happy. I will pick everything apart. My team that are around me now would tell you that it's probably one of my worst qualities, is that I will find fault in everything. But that's a creative process, and I was like that when I was in music as well. If a song was never finished, and if I did feel it was finished, 3 years later when I'd listen back on it, I go, damn, if only I done this, or if only I sang it in that way, you know. And now it's like, if only I asked that question, if only I didn't say things like that, if only I wasn't sat that way on the chair, you know. But that is what is needed to be creative and to strive to be the best. You know, if I started turning around every day and going, I've nothing to learn, or this is as good as I'm going to get, and you know, started thinking I was the dog's bollocks, I would be in trouble, I think.
Yeah, I think as well, you know, we're our own worst critics, you know, and I think sometimes you can potentially overanalyze, because to my understanding, you had no like journalism, sort of, you know, prior courses, you didn't study that.
No, I didn't. No, nothing at all. And I get asked to do quite a lot of like radio stuff. You say, you know, when there's a big fight on, especially if at the time when Conor was fighting quite a bit with the UFC and stuff, Conor McGregor, and you know, they'd ask me for my opinion on the fight or breakdowns, and they'd always introduce me on air as a mixed martial artist, or a mixed martial artist journalist, or a box analyst or something, like, you know, like a journalist. And you know, I'm definitely not a journalist. You know, I would like to think I'm more of a conversationalist, if we're going to put a title on it. But journalist, yeah, no, I would never insult people who actually go and study and you know, and I don't ask difficult questions to fighters. And that's a little bit of two things. I don't do the clickbait route. You know, I don't do the capital letters, the oh my God, exclusive. I don't do the need to be first. It's all about wanting to just, you know, tell stories and be creative and create pieces of art, you know, and so yeah, no, I wouldn't ever say I was a journalist. And then what happens is people call you a journalist, and then people will say online, she's not a bloody journalist. She doesn't ask any difficult questions or, you know, different things. Well, you can't win.
No, I was going to say you can't win, but I think you hit the nail on the head with me personally. Like, because I remember watching you on the lives with Dave, and I was thinking, obviously, I know, you know, I knew who Dave Allen was, but I was thinking, I wonder what this lady's story is. You know, what her background is. So for me, it's nice just to see, you know, someone how they got into the sport, because I find that a lot of people just sort of fall into it by mistake. We've had people that just join a gym because they want to lose weight and then find they've got a natural talent. And you know, lots of other reasons. I've got a date for you as well. I'm going to give you this date, and I just want to see if it rings any bells for you.
Go on.
Are you worried now?
Yeah, terrified.
The 26th of January 2016. I'll give you a minute.
Is it something I done something on that date?
No, it's a positive thing. It's no like dodgy dates or anything like that. I've not got in touch with any of your exes.
Ed, kill them all.
Yeah, they're under the floor where you're sitting.
20 January.
26th of January 2016.
I know what it is.
Gonna.
My first interview.
It was your first upload, yeah, on Fight Connect TV.
Ah, was it Artem Lobov?
Sorry, say the name again.
Artem Lobov. He's ex-UFC fighter.
I believe so, yeah. I just had a look. I looked at the date more than the actual content itself, but I was just like looking at like what you was like then to what you are like now, and that sort of leads me on to what I was going to ask you. Like when you again, I know you don't over analyze stuff, but I imagine you sometimes have a look back at your old stuff. When you look at like the early days to, you know, what you're doing now, do you see a big difference?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I probably speak. I think I speak a little bit better. I think. I know how to. I know how to sort of. I know where the camera is a little bit more. I know how to fill gaps a little bit better. Yeah, I do. There's definitely improvements. I've definitely gotten a lot better. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just like an air of confidence, I think, and more knowledge. I know more about the sport. I know more about the type of fighters that I'm interviewing, or you know, that I've probably at this stage, you know, a lot of people that I'm interviewing, I've probably met them a couple of times. I've probably interviewed them a couple of times before.
Do you feel like as well sometimes, because you're quite well known now, sorry. I told a few people that you're coming on today, and everyone I spoke to knew you. Do you feel like that helps as well? Because when people are coming to do interviews, they know you and they've seen you before, so almost they get an idea of how you're going to be.
Yeah, like I think maybe, word travels fast in boxing, or in combat sports, and especially when you're female, it definitely people take a little bit more notice, I think. And when you're Irish, and, I think a lot of people sort of take notice as well. But yeah, I what I've found is that, a lot of fighters, they, if they have a good experience, they'll then go and be like, go to their gym or whatever, be like, oh, I was interviewed by this Irish girl, it was good fun. And, then I'll meet their teammate or their coach or something down the line. They're like, oh, so-and-so interviewed you, they said you were lovely or whatever. So I think, being just nice, I think it carries a lot of weight. I don't, I'm very normal, and I don't take myself too seriously, and I don't take, I'm actually very grateful and I'm very proud of the work that I do, and what I do is very important to me. But what's important to me is being a good person and being an honest person, and doing good work. And I think that's what shines through. And I think that I'm trusted within fighting communities. Nobody thinks that I'm going to sidetrack them or ask something that I shouldn't ask, just to get a reaction or to get that clickbait headline. So I think that pulls a lot of weight. Whereas you probably suffer a little bit on views, as in the numbers with boxing fans or combat sports fans. But in terms of the building the relationships, it comes in, and it is definitely something to factor in, because ultimately the direction that I want to be in is where I'm at with the podcast, sitting down with people for an hour and a half, 2 hours, doing documentaries, spending time in camp with fighters. And you can't do that if they can't trust you. You won't get the best out of them, and you won't get an honest portrayal of who they are. So for me, obviously the position that I'm in, with being in, partnership with Empire, and doing the media work for Empire and all their brands, which Fight Connect TV now falls under, it's given me a freedom to not have to worry about making views or getting views because I need the advertising revenue or anything like that, which is what happens with a lot of the bigger combat sports channels. Is they're all fighting for the exclusive. They're all fighting to be first because they need to have the big numbers to get the revenue in to allow them to continue to do what they're doing. And when you take, the financial need to do anything out of anything, it becomes a little bit more enjoyable and a little bit more honest.
Yeah, when you was talking then, it reminded me of when Umar recently was getting a grilling from Eddie Hearn. I take it you've seen it. Absolutely great. To be fair to him though, he held his own, but I do like the little bit of back and forth between Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren. I think it's good for the sport. It brings more eyeballs to it.
I love it. It's brilliant. I love it. I love the banter that Coogan has with Eddie. I love the banter that Umar had, and I know both the lads, quite well now at this stage, because obviously we do a lot of the show circuits together since I've been here. And Coogan in particular has taken me sort of under his wing a little bit, and he's been very kind and supportive to me moving over here and starting a new life here. And Umar, I have a good crack with Umar. He's kind of like a little brother now at this stage, but he's so good at what he does.
He's very good, yeah.
So innocent, So like when he gets a hard time online, I do feel very bad for him. But yeah, no, it's good fun. They're two great lads.
Yeah, no, they do produce some great content. And I think, like you were saying as well about being kind, like for you coming on here today is a massive favor for us, because again, you're well known in the boxing combat sport scene, so we appreciate that. I know you saw earlier, because I tagged you in, I asked if anyone had any questions, so I've had a few come in just to finish up on. And at some point as well, I'd love to get you back on to talk about more about what you're doing. Like now, it was just nice to get you on and talk about your journey up until this point. But I've got a couple of questions if you're ready.
Always.
So someone's asked, would Dave Allen beat Johnny Fisher?
Oh, God.
That's a different. I knew you'd like that one.
Oh, would Dave Allen? I mean, that's not fair. I love him.
I will snippet this bit and obviously try and send it to him. So you know.
I mean, I think it's a little bit unfair because I interviewed them both. I have to be on the fence, but also they're at two completely different stages in their career. Completely different. Dave has the experience, you know, and Johnny has the youth on his side. Dave will kill me because he's like, I'm younger than you. But
you're getting splinters on that fence there.
I'm seriously on the fence.
That's right. We can move on if you want.
Yeah, please.
Someone's put tea or coffee. I take it that means do you prefer tea or coffee?
Coffee. Always coffee, and I like coffee black and strong.
Okay. All those early starts, I imagine. Holiday destination. Any holiday plans for this year?
No, I've none. As I think my next day off is in July, and we're in March. But no holiday destinations. But I am mad to go to Jamaica. I really want to go to Jamaica.
Okay, yeah, a bit of sun. That sounds good. England or Ireland?
Ireland. Are you nuts?
No, and what's the reason behind that? I know there's pretty obvious reasons, but I've only ever been to Dublin. We had a great time, but reasoning behind that.
It's my home country. It's a beautiful country. I'm very proud to be Irish, and but I must say that I am very grateful to the United Kingdom, South Yorkshire in particular, for the warm welcome that they've given me. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to, there's a certain opportunity that is awarded to people when they go to the UK, and I definitely feel that. And I'm doing what my ancestors have done for many generations, gone to the UK to get work.
Someone's asked if you are single.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Right, well, what I'll do, I'll send you their handle on Instagram.
Don't put this online because all the guys I'm dating will be devastated.
Oh, okay, just a private DM then for that one.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask. Sorry, go on.
I'm married to the game.
I have to be someone in the game then, maybe. Actually, I heard you say you don't want to date fighters, so maybe that's not a goer. But I wanted to ask you, if you could only do 3 more interviews, who would you interview and why? And it can be anyone in the world, not necessarily sport, just anyone.
Can they be sit down proper podcasts or like long ones?
I think a podcast, because I feel like post-fight interviews are different. Podcast is really sort of just trying to learn about someone. Well, that's my opinion anyway. Obviously everyone's got their own opinion, but podcast, I think.
3 people.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 3 if you can think of 3 or a couple. I know you've interviewed some big people, and you had you was with the heavyweight champion yesterday, so I know you've pretty been there, done it, and got a t-shirt. But if you could interview 3 people, anyone in the world.
Do you know what? I really want to have a sit-down interview with Deontay Wilder. I really want to have a sit-down interview with Mike Tyson. Oh God.
Obviously, there is Tom from TRSB Sports Podcast. Just putting that one out there.
Absolutely, but I mean that's like the real wish list, Who else would there be? Do you know what? I I'd like to have a proper sit down with Clarissa Shields. I interviewed her recently, but it was only for a couple of minutes after her fight. And I don't know, I just felt like there's a lot of story in her eyes. But then I'd love to interview Ricky Hatton, Noel Gallagher. He was at the Cranbrook show last week, and I was raging. I was watching online in Ireland, and my teammate, my nemesis, thorn in my side, Jamie Sheldon, who I share an office with, he was doing the cuts for Kel, and he sent out pictures of him with Noel Gallagher, so I was very, very jealous. But you know what? You know who I would love to interview, and unfortunately it is no longer possible because he's no longer with us, but it'll be Brendan Ingle. I would love to have met Brendan Ingle and have a proper sit down with him.
Yeah, it's sad. What have you? I take it you've interviewed Dominic Ingle previously.
You know, I had Dominic on the podcast, and before he came in, we're like, you won't get nothing out of him. That'll be a shy podcast. He's infamous for, being very closed and not, you're very direct with answering and stuff, and yes or no kind of answering. So I was a little bit shitting myself when he came in, and I'd met him times before. He came in and he couldn't have been nicer. And, from the off, he was just such a gent. And we sat down and we had a great conversation about, his childhood and, what he saw in the gyms, and growing up with Prince Nazim and Johnny Nelson, Ryan Rhodes, Harold Graham, all these phenomenal history book fighters that he grew up with. And we got to the end of the podcast and he started crying, when talking about his dad, when talking about Brendan Ingle. And I have cried, and I have been in interviews where other people have cried for many times, and I'm so good. I'm like, I tap into my compassionate sides, but for some reason I was just so shocked when Dominic started crying. I didn't expect it at all. And it was a really lovely moment. It was a really lovely moment for me as a podcast host or an interviewer, to know that someone has felt that comfortable with you, and that they can be in that honest space. And then also you come out and you go, fuck, that's going to go viral.
Yeah, that's doing views.
Like, Jesus, this is brilliant. And about a couple of weeks later, I was at Arnold Festival in Birmingham, which is obviously a big sports festival, health, wellness, and different things, but they had a combat sports section. And Johnny Nelson was interviewing Roy Jones Jr. And I was with Empire Fight Store, who I'm obviously the media director for. And, I was at our stand and different things, all our boxing equipment and different bits. And Johnny walked past and he was like, oh my gosh, how are you? I was like, hi, like Johnny Nelson, never gets old, Johnny Nelson. But he was like, you made Dominic Ingle cry. I got sent a WhatsApp with someone being like, you have to check out this interview. I'm like, what is my life? Like, Johnny Nelson is getting text messages to check out the interview. But yeah, it was really special, And then me and Dom have a really good relationship, and so he's so disliked as well. Some people love him, some people really dislike him. And he plays up to it again, and is a good character for the sport of boxing. But I think he's fantastic. I wouldn't have a bad word to say about him. And anytime I'm in the Ingle gym, he pulls out his guitar and he gets me to sing a little song. The last time I done it, he put it up on his Instagram, and it went viral, so it was good fun. Yeah,
no, he was good at the press conference.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's quick-witted. He's got, I think that's like his dad in him. There's that Irish quick wit.
Yeah, no, I think as well, like you were saying, it just, it says a lot about you that you get someone on that is known for maybe being a little bit reserved, to feel that comfortable to, because crying in front of people, is especially being male, I suppose, and being in the sport that he's in, it's probably not something he's going to do too often. So to do that in your company is probably compliment to you. And just finally, I don't want to keep you all night, but going forward, if you could, give our channel one bit of advice, what would it be?
Oh, it sounds a bit cliche, but don't give up, don't give up, and stay true to yourself, and stay true to content, honest content. There's been people think that I've had a very easy ride in this. I really haven't. There's been things over the years where my friends and people who are not in the sport and don't understand the sport have said, why are you doing this? It's I've had bad experiences. I've had people say, you'll never make money off this, you'll never make a career off this. And if I listened to them, or if I had chosen to do clickbait articles or interviews and, forget about my integrity and just go for a scoop, then it wouldn't have worked. So I think don't stop, keep the vision, figure out what the vision is. It's very easy to do something and to keep going and not really understand, why are we doing this? What are we putting in the effort here? So I would say make the vision clear, work hard, don't stop, trust your instinct, trust your gut, and don't listen to anybody else, especially anybody else who tells you that you're going wrong or you're doing something wrong.
Well, I appreciate advice. Yeah, no, it's like, we went to our first show a little while ago in Brentwood. We got there at 3. I think we left at about 11:30, and it was a great day. It was a tiring day. Got the interviews out Sunday morning, and I think I like doing it for different reasons, but I love seeing the numbers as well, getting new faces on the channel, and just I like doing the post-fight interview stuff. But I think, like you were saying earlier, sometimes it feels a little bit rushed because you haven't got that long. But when you actually get someone on that's comfortable and they're happy to tell their story, I think I personally prefer doing that side of it. Anything else you want to finish up on? Because again, I'd like to get you back on at some point to talk about more about what you're doing now. But it was nice just to get you on and just talk about your journey up until this point.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, for your time and for having me on. It's nice to be on the other end of it and get asked some questions. And do the paragraph, but I'd love to come back on. Thank you for having me, and just thank you to anyone who watches this and anyone who is a supporter of Fight Connect TV and tunes in. I'm really grateful, because ultimately, without people watching the videos and talking about what's going on, I would be irrelevant.
Well, you've had over 700,000 views on there, so I think you're doing something right.
Let's hope.
Yeah, not that I looked at it too much, going back to your first video, all your views and stuff. But yeah, no, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to get you on. I really appreciate your time, especially, I know you're a busy individual, so we are grateful, and hopefully get you back on soon. Have another podcast, another catch up.
I'd love. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. I will speak to you soon. Thank you, Lydia.
Okay, talk to you later. Have a good evening.